And we're live. Hey, everybody. I am Jeff with Fuller Embroidery, and we have Matt Anderley from Patchphrase. And today we will be talking about file types. So, as you guys may have noticed, Mr. Justin Armenta is not here with us today. He is actually preparing his class for Long Beach. I'm really excited for him to go teach that. It's a workshop. I think he just has one workshop, or is he teaching two classes? Do you know, Matt?
He has his class, and then I believe it's the like a panel or something. I think that's what it's called, with Eric and someone else, I thought. I just got hit by a train earlier today, so I don't really remember a whole lot of stuff.
All right, well, we'll grab just a couple of comments here. So we have Letty Walker checking in. Hello. Kingsbury, last week messages. Yes. So I'm not exactly sure why last week's messages are showing up on this week's show, but that's the way it's working at the moment. We have Miss Cindy King joining us. Hello. And Kingsbury Crafts. Hello as well. So last week we weren't able to go live because I was having technical difficulties. My computer was crashing about every, 9 minutes or so. Didn't want to work. So this week we're up and we're going, and I'm pretty excited. I'm just trying to open up and check some files here. So today's show is going to be talking about file types, and particularly when we open them and what we need to be looking for. Interestingly enough, when you open up a machine file into your software, a lot of softwares want to convert it to outlines, an object, an outline, and whatnot. And the goal is that it's going to try and create something that you can scale more than you would, say, just a standard machine file. So, for instance, if we brought it in as stitches, I want to say that, what's the rule of thumb? 10% maybe scaling.
Yeah, there's an actual diagram that I do believe I have posted on our website on theembroiderynerd.com. But at least I hope it is on there.
We will find out here shortly. But the goal is that it's going to take your machine file, it's going to recognize objects, and then that way when you scale it, it's going to regenerate the stitches. Now, that always comes with some type of a caveat, right? That when we do that, we want to be careful that we're not, that we test when we scale something like that. Because if we scale it and we don't test and we just run it on the item, it may not have scaled everything properly, and it's going to change things, and you may or may not like the result that you get. So it's always important that if you're going to scale something or you're going to check something, especially when you're looking at machine files and you're bringing it into objects, you're going to check and make sure that it didn't alter your file in any ways. And Matt, you're looking for that diagram, correct?
Yeah, so it's one of the things I did not get uploaded onto our new site. We redid it, and we've all been pretty crazy with the holiday breaks and everything, which was not a break. News
I still don't feel like it's over. It's just that one kind of never-ending break that we've had.
Yeah.
Especially with the cold snap and school staying out. Let me just grab something here, and we will just go to that one right there, and I will open it. And my computer will wait a little bit. So while Matt's looking for that, I'm going to check in and make sure that we got all the comments. So we have Crafting Away saying hello, hello and welcome. So let me take a look here. I will go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to do that style. Okay, so how do we know if an item has been brought in as, like, a DST file has been broken up into objects? Okay, so right now I have this file open up in Wilcom, and I will show you that if we look here, we can see that we've got a run stitch, another run stitch, and a third run stitch, and that actually came in as a machine file, which I find interesting because it is just a run stitch. And then we come here and we have a short run, and we have a short manual stitch, satin stitch, manual stitch, satin stitch, and it actually breaks this into all different manners of objects. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, as long as we're aware of it and we know to test. Sometimes what can happen is when you open up a file like this and the software doesn't necessarily understand what to do with it or why, when it goes to regenerate the stitches and it breaks it into objects, it'll actually break the file. It'll change the stitch position, it'll change the layout, and you'll get something completely unexpected. And as we were going through preparing for this live, one of the fun things is that we struggled to find a file that would break it significantly. It's something that we've both had happen to us. And then it turned into, okay, well, where's the file that happened to? And so we were looking for it. Now, if we want to, and I'll go back to this view here, if we want to bring in a file that is, and I'll just go there. If we want to bring in a DSD file and we want to retain it as stitches, in Wilcom, we can come down here and we can click on the little options button and it'll pop up right here, these open options. Now we have the machine type, the recognized jumps as in a trim. So this is how many jumps it's going to see before it recognizes it as a trim. We have our stop codes, but right here we have this object to outlines. If we unselect the objects to outline and we hit OK, and we open the file, and I hit the open button, oh, it's open already. It doesn't want me to open it twice. Okay, let's try that again. So we're going to go into options, and we're going to make sure objects and outlines are unchecked, and we'll hit OK, and we'll hit open, and now we'll wait a minute while it opens. You can see that over here, now we have 3 objects, where before it was a ton of objects. Now it's only 3, and they're all manual stitches. So this is one separate object. This is one separate object, and now we have our 3rd object. So it took, between every color change, it read for trims, and it made sure that it preserved the stitches as it would. So that's one way that can be done, and it can be looked at is when we're opening a file. If we're not planning on scaling it and we want to retain the original information in the file, then we would open it as, we would not convert it to objects and outlines. I got that right, right?
Sounds right.
Okay, so now, while I move some files around, because you guys probably don't need to see all the files on my computer, just most of them. Not that one. We will go to that one and not that one, that one, and that one, and that one. All right, Matt. So do you have anything you want to throw in there while
I am scouring the database to find out what the name of the image is. But there are a lot of pages to go through.
All right. So we had Ramona jumping in. She was able to make it. Awesome. So we want to show this in multiple software. And the next software I'm going to pull up here is going to be Pulse. And it's just the same. We can go there. I can jump to my desktop because I put it on my desktop. And we're going to change it to all design files. And now we have that object right there, and I can bring it in. Now, this brought it in our sequence window, is it attempted to break it into objects. And you can see that I can grab an object here, not that one. There we go. I can grab some of the objects out and I can pull them out here. Now, this is converting it from outlines to objects. So this is a DSD file. When I go to scale it, it may or may not scale properly. And you can see that we have a ton of start and stop points, which is kind of crazy. And when I go to scale it, it doesn't regenerate properly. And we get some of these broken nodes, which is what I would expect in an object like this. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at how that changes when we open it as a DST file. So I'm going to go back here. We've got all design files already, and the file is right there. Now, right here is where I have it. It's convert stitches to outlines or open as stitch segments. So I'm going to open it as a stitch segment there, and I'm going to hit open. And if we look over here, we can see now that it's a singular object. It's a stitch segment. So it's not going to allow me to break it apart into individual pieces, which is what we would expect. Now, if we try to scale it, it's going to scale. Of course, our stitches are going to go wider because it is just like scaling it on the machine. We've preserved this as stitches. And now we'll go to the third software because I have it open. How many do I have open? I have 4 open. So we'll jump up here to the top. And again, we're going to go there. And here it's just a simple checkbox. So it's right there, convert to outlines. And if I convert it to outlines, we can see here that we have a manual, a run, a manual, a run, a manual, a run. That's kind of interesting how it's broken it out. And if we regenerate the size, it didn't necessarily regenerate all the stitch segments the way it was supposed to, and it came across there. So if we close that out, and no, I don't want to save any changes, and we go to open it, and I click on it again, and I don't convert it to outline, it's going to bring it in as manual stitch segments. So there we have our manual stitch segments. That is actually our initial movement of the machine, and then we have the stitch segments here. So this can be important when you guys are opening up and you're looking at machine files. You want to make sure that you're looking at the, if you can ever get the native file, because the native file is going to give you the most amount of functionality when it comes to needing to adjust something or change something. When it comes to a DST file, if you open the DST file and you're getting something that you're not expecting and something that you wouldn't plan on seeing, it's a good idea to open your DST file as stitch objects to see if it's your computer is opening them and changing them when you're opening it, converting it to outlines and changing it when you're opening it. I think I got that right.
Yeah, because if you have that setting enabled, you open it and you save it back to, maybe you're just like, I just got to change the colors on the DST file, which may not be applicable anyways. Your software might change it, and then you digitize it specifically with certain extra stitches or whatever. Your software might strip it out. You never know. So it's one of the things you have to be careful with.
It is something that when you save out a file, it processes your file through what's called a stitch filter, and that's going to pull out small stitches, some irregularities. That's a good way to put it. Out of the file, and it's going to alter it just a little bit generally when you save it. And we did a Facebook Live or not a Facebook Live, I did a YouTube video about that a while back, is how sometimes when you save out a file, it's not necessarily what you see is what you're going to get. And that becomes even more true when you start pulling in DST files and you start saving DST files back out. It's going to change it. I'm not going to say it's going to. It has the potential to change it, and you're going to get something that you're not going to expect. And that's where problems arise, because now you're trying to troubleshoot a problem that you may have introduced in the sequence. And I know that's one of the things when I send a file to somebody and they're having issues, I ask them, did you open it in your software and send it to your machine? Did you open it and save it out again and send it to your machine? Or did you just take the file that I provided you, did you put it directly on your machine? I think 100% of the time it's always come back that they've opened the file and then they've saved it out again. And then my first troubleshooting step is always take the file that I emailed you and put that on the machine and see if the issue persists. All softwares, they're coded by different companies. They see objects, they see stitches differently. I guess when they're trying to convert it to objects, they all have different functions and algorithms, and it's trying to make sure that when it is pulling it in, that it's not changing something that necessarily shouldn't. And I will say, for the most part, it does okay when it's just like a standard fill. Sometimes it'll break it into 2 objects. Satin stitches it'll do. But when you start doing more of the artistic stuff is generally where I see it break the most. And I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Matt.
Yeah, I don't personally take DST files from anyone to run, because I mean, all I'm doing is patches. If I get a DST file that I could be looking at a design with significantly more stitches than what is required to make the same level of quality or better. And I know that from historical precedents that sometimes some DST files just act different on different machines, or you never know. You could, if you get a DST file from another embroidery shop who knows that they're losing that customer, they could just manipulate the DST file so it looks worse, so that they'll come back, which that's possibility. I mean, that's very low likelihood. Another thing you have to worry about too is if you have more than one machine, even if they're the exact same machine, they might stitch differently. Like I have 2 happy foreheads. One of them had a setting disabled where it was doing was it a 0.2 pull comp on any satins. The other one didn't, and it only took me a little bit to realize that was the issue.
A little bit?
Yeah.
That sounds like a week.
It was a little while. Well, it was. I know that's the issue, but how do I change it? And it's like I knew.
Oh yeah, there is that.
But that's a whole different live topic.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's going into the controllers of machine where they add pull comp is going to be very, very difficult.
But what I also wanted to say is there is a difference between your native and your actual machine file. And if you're familiar with like any Adobe or GIMP or any image manipulation software, you have raster and then you have vector files. It's pretty much the exact same thing. Raster files are the ones that it's your flat exported image, like what you would get if you took an image from like a magazine and scanned it into your computer. It has no data to it, like how the image was made, but the vector file is how that image was actually made. And this is kind of what you're looking at with a native versus DST file. The native file is what is made in your software. So whether it's Wilcom or it's Pulse, Floriani, it has the actual like instructions to tell the software, hey, I want this stitch to be here. This is where it needs to be, versus if you open a machine file, it's just saying machine, move here, make stitch, move here, make stitch, move. Okay, that's a trim. That's all it does. So when you modify that machine file where I did the move trim, if you spread that out, it's going to spread those stitches out. It's not going to add a 4th one or a 5th one. And if I bring up my screen right here, I finally found it. This was a diagram I made back in 2020, showing you the difference between a native and a DST file. So you see this native, the black and the blue is what you would get in your actual embroidery software. So let's say I make a 30 millimeter long line in my software with a 2 millimeter stitch length. I'm going to have 15 nodes or 15 stitches. If I resize that native file in my software to 80 millimeters, the stitch length is going to stay the same, but now I go from 15 stitches to 40 stitches. That's exactly what you would expect. But contrary to that, if you took the native, or not the native, the machine file, DST, whatever all the other formats are, there's literally 4,900 of them. If I started with a 30 millimeter long one and I same parameters, this is what it's set to, or if I took the native, exported it to DST, this is what it was. So I'm still getting the 2 millimeter stitch length, 15 points. Now I expand that to 80 millimeters. You're going to see that the stitch length actually increased to 5.3, but I only have 15 stitches. So if I compare this blue line with the red line, that's, that's a pretty big difference in your density that you're going to get there. And that's how your designs will start looking weird. And if you do this too far, if this 5.3 becomes, was it 12 point something, 12.1 or 12.6 or whatever, each of these is going to be a trim. So that's why you can't just take a design that's made for like a left chest. Like let's say it's just a little cross or something. You buy a cross off Etsy that's like a 1-inch cross and you expand it to be a jacket back. Yeah, that's not going to work if it's I mean, that wouldn't work regardless, but still, that's why you have to digitize it differently or go to the native file. So it looks like Jeff has something pulled up. Are you ready? No? Okay. Then never mind.
Pulled up.
I'm going to look at the comments, just see if anyone has any questions about this. All right, so I'm going to pull up Ramona's here real quick. Ramona's one of our pro digitizers in the group. She's saying software will save in their defaults when you hit the save option. That is 100% true. When you open up your software, you can go in the options and whatever, and you can set it up so if I export as in the Willcom, if I export to my happies, it is going to export if the stitch length is this amount, add a trim here. Versus if I sent it to my Tajima, it's not going to do that based off of how I have it set up. And you can change that. If you don't know about that, read your user manual. I'm only familiar with Floriani, Pulse, and Willcoms, and Hatch. So you'd have to look in your user manual specifically for that. Plus, software gets updated all the time, so I haven't digitized the file for a couple weeks now, so there's that too. So I'll be a little rusty, one could say. And then we have a comment from Nikki saying, so if someone is creating in Willcom and she's using Hatch 3, I should always open it as EMB. Yeah, so if you have the EMB file, that's your native. Think of that as if you're using Illustrator, that's your .ai for Adobe Illustrator, or what is it, CorelDRAW CDR, I think, if you're using CorelDRAW. That is basically going to have, so like this line from one point to another point, it'll have the mathematical formula and everything, so you can resize it. That's why this all works versus just being a machine file. If you don't have the EMB file or PXF, it's not the end of the world. You just have to be very careful about my diagram here and how your stitches are most likely going to be affected. Now, like Jeff showed how you can tell it to open it up as a shape. So like if I bring up my pulse here, I'm going to go ahead and hide the comment real quick. If I save this design as a DST, I guess it already existed, but now it double exists. And then open it. I can see that this shape of this clothespin is an actual object, and I can go ahead and I can edit the nodes. Versus if I did open and select it once, options, and I get rid of this objects and outlines as Jeff showed, we click open. And now if I zoom in on it, so I select it, we can actually see right here that all of this butter color, and that's the literal name of it from Philtech. It's great. There's definitely not like 5 of them behind my head. We can see that this is all one object, and you can tell by when I switch it to a different color. I can't go in. If I hit H, good luck.
It's a note or two.
There's no way I'm manipulating this. I will
Well, you
say,
can. It's granularly per stitch because every stitch is a node.
okay, I'm just going to zoom in. If you get motion sick, look away for like 5 seconds. Okay, it's safe. Each of these blue squares is a stitch. If I were to scale this up, which I can do,
Well, why don't you grab a small subset and paste it into a new window?
you know what? That's not a bad idea. Okay, let me go ahead and get rid of this crosshair. Oh, H, that's what I gotta do. All right. So we can see each of these white dots is a, and now blue dots is a stitch. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to resize this whole shape. So I'm going, just to make it in freedom units, we're going from about 3 inches wide. I'm just going to go and double it. We're going to go 6 inches wide. It did not add any extra stitches into this. It just stretched them out. So if your machine is a lighter, I got to think, if your tensions are lighter, you might get more looping. If you're doing a satin, I mean, that's probably.
So if you scale it up really high, Matt, some of those stitches are going to disappear because it's going to start reading it as trims, correct?
Yeah, well, it depends on the software, because I would say that some software, obviously I'm just in Wilcom right now, but some software might show it as still being a stitch. But the machine is going to read it as a trim, because what happens, if I remember how to do this, I don't know. Options. Nope, that ain't it. There is a way.
I believe it's in your settings to increase the number of jumps per stitch or per trim.
Yeah, I don't. In settings, edit, design, probably under setup options. Calibrate, machine runtime. No, we'll try this one. Export. Nope. General. I don't know which one it is, but I don't want to dwell too much on it. But basically, I forget the magic number. It is 12 something millimeters. So if that's the stitch length, man, this is, all right, let's switch back to metric. And I'm going to go from this point to that. So that's 6.14 millimeters from one stitch to the next. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this, we'll just go 10 inches wide. And I'm going to grab a same one. Now we can see that it's 9.36. And just because I want to absolutely go crazy with this, we're going to go 16 inches, which is awfully, and that's still not over 12. But basically, that would now be a trim. And if I turn TrueView on, there would be a lot of trims in this design. And another thing you might have noticed is the density has severely been impacted. I just paste the original design. You can see how it looks like it's actually filled in. But the enlarged one is not. Which, if I bring back up my design here, or my diagram, it matches perfectly with it. If you picture each of these blue lines as a different row of a tatami fill as it goes up to make like a tower or something, this is okay, you know, for stitch density. But now I just stretched it out. I didn't add any more stitch density. No, I just moved how far away they are.
The other aspect of that is that you can go the opposite direction and it'll move them closer together to the point that you're going to have issues.
Yeah. So if you get a jacket back design and you were like, I really need it on a left chest, you go ahead and do that. Yeah, you're going from this to this one. So you're going from the red where it's spaced out nicely. You're still doing 15 points. You're just doing it in less than half. So, and the reason I did 30 and 80 is to make the math easier. So I know there's one of you judging me. But that's what I got. If you guys want that diagram, I'll drop it in the Discord so you guys can join that and join the discussion there and see how awesome it is. So back over to you, Jeff.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm giving you a hard time. I shot you a message, but all right. So, we've been talking about native files as well as versus a machine file. So that's one of the things that we've had questions about, and we'll go ahead and grab a couple more comments because I don't think you caught this one. So Ramona says, to get and make use of a native file, you have to invest in the software used to create the file. It can get pricey if you're working with different digitizers, or it's not even an option if you are buying stock files. So sometimes they don't even give you a native file at all when you're building a stock file. And a lot of times, if you resize a stock design and it doesn't work out well, you resized it. That's not what they originally intended it for. And so they may or may not help you support it when you say, hey, I ran into these options or these issues. There's a good chance that they're going to come back and say, well, did you open it? Did you resize it? Because that's not necessarily something that they want you to do unless they're giving you a native object, and then they're going to allow it. So Jesse asked here, aren't there a special way to bring DSTs into Wilcom? And let me grab my Wilcom here and I'll close it because it doesn't like me to have the same file open more than once. And I'll go ahead and add that here. So when you're bringing in a DST file and you're going to open it, you can just open that right there. You can click on the file that you want to bring in. And again, you're going to go to options and you can unselect objects to outlines. And by unselecting that, it's going to bring it in as objects. Like that, or not objects. It's going to bring it in as stitch segments. So now I have 3 stitch segments. They're all going to be handled exactly like they would if they go on the machine versus breaking it apart and trying to make sense of it as an object. So we've talked a little bit about that. Now, the other thing that this has kind of been a 2-pronged live is because these have all been based off of questions that we've seen. Now, the second thing that we've seen is a discussion between object-based text, true type fonts, and stitch fonts. Now, this kind of plays into it because when you go and you buy a font and it's, you get DST letters, you get machine files as letters, and you bring it into your software because you want to use it. If you're bringing it in, it's going to try to convert it to objects, and it can have some issues. The second part is when somebody comes in and they bring in a true type font. And what a true type font does is when you open it up in your software looks at the vector. A true type font is essentially a vector. Your software looks at the vector and it goes, okay, how can I turn this into a sewable letter? It comes with different, degrees of accuracy because it is just it's running it through an algorithm. It's attempting to adjust it versus an object-based font in your software. Now, an object-based font is a font that somebody went through and they digitized each object, and the object are assigned stitch properties. These stitch properties are going to regenerate the stitches no matter what size you put it. And there are constraints, but it's going to try to regenerate within those constraints. A true type font, it's going to auto digitize. And that's the word that I'm going to use. And I've pulled up a font here. This is a true type or not a true type font. This is a stitch font. This is object based. They went through and a digitizer manually digitized every letter. This is going to have a really high probability of success when you go to sew it out because it was hand digitized by somebody. And they adjusted for things by, let's say setting this object right here underneath, making sure that these two objects overlap, underlap, and that goes down and your stitch directions are proper. This down here is a true type font. And if we zoom in on it, you can see we've got some weird cuts in it, like right here. The stitch angle is actually running in a different direction. It tries to pull and turn this corner instead of just overlapping. And it's the same here on this R. Now, when you're going into true type fonts, there are two things that are going to be determine on how well it's going to turn out. The first one is how good the vector is. True type font artists don't necessarily build their objects. Well, they don't build their objects for embroidery. They don't plan on it being used for embroidery. So they don't build their vectors in that way. And some vectors are not as clean as others. They might have pieces that overlap and underlap that'll show as void spaces when you go to convert them to stitches. And my mind just went blank. I completely forgot what I was going to say. Nobody's judging me at all.
Yeah, it happens to us all. But yeah, the artists don't always envision their fonts being used for embroidery. Just like we all get the logos from companies like, hey, I want this crazy metal band to be a patch or something, or put on a hat. It's like you have to plan your font to be used for embroidery when you start it. But
so that was one software that showed how that's done. And here's another. Now, this one, we did the same letters throughout the different softwares. This is a object-based font that was digitized in the software. Pulse actually has some really cool kerning stuff in their software. When it's created by a digitizer, they can actually manually adjust the kerning and visually adjust the kerning. It's not just a set number based off of the EM value, but it can be visually kerned for different letter pairs, like capital A next to a capital T. Those two letters can come up a little bit closer. And the same with like a lowercase e going next to a V, it can be pulled in a little bit closer so it'll visually look good. And each object is by itself. It is set up as a text object right now, but each object is digitized. So this bar here has been digitized. This has been digitized here as well. And when you scale it, it's going to automatically regenerate the stitches based off of the scaling. And it'll come back down. Now, this here is a true type font. And as you can see, it didn't necessarily assign it any cut lines or any angle lines. It put all of the angles, the stitch angles, going in one direction. And this is something that you will see based off of the software that you're opening it in, whether or not you'll see something like this. And this is fairly simple to go in, and it would essentially be like I'd be editing the vector. I would go in and I can trim the objects and I can change it. But this is something that is going to require me to put in my time and my effort to fix it versus using a keyboard type font that's object based and just being able to type it out and go without having to worry about making major adjustments to the artwork. Let me double check and see if I got this in the third software, because I was going to do 3. I didn't. I only got it in software.
We'll pop over to mine real quick then.
Yep.
So I got WillComp open up here. So this is the same thing. So the top one in yellow is the native. It's just block 2. I did scale it up. Jeff said default size, but I scaled it up to 1 inch because, let's really break it. So both of these are 1 inch tall. Top one is the native block. The bottom one is a true type font, which is a fairly common one, Arial Black. It's used on a lot of print media. A lot of logos use it, so it should turn out well, one would think. However, we can see that the B looks like it's kind of like exploding out. It's got this satin jump, whereas there's also a split right down through here. Yeah, you can see it on the screen. It's not very realistic. I mean, if you just picture how would you write the letter B, or in this case, draw it or whatever, you don't draw it like that. That's just weird. Same with the Q. There's a random cut line here. I forgot. I should have watched Eric's font video he did, I think, 2 years ago already now.
At least.
That it's not the tail, unless it is. I don't know. Eric, please don't be mad at me. It's actually a really good video, like most of his others.
Where it goes over the terminology of the
and like what is serif and everything. There's so much I learned from it. If I have the time, I'll try to find the link and put it in. Unless Eric can just like boop, 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 boop. The wizardry is, and just post it down there. Admin permission, remove if not allowed, whatever. Same thing. All these letters, they just don't look like they're going to sew out well. There's something funky going with the S, like it should end this way. And in order for me to modify this, I just have to break it out. And then where is add stitch angles? Yeah, so now I can see all these crazy stitch lines. Like there's the stitch angle right here ends like that. Like, why would you do that? Just that simple little tweak made it look already better, but I have to do that for every single letter that I type, for every single design, and for every single font, versus if I just use a stock font. And then I took that native test file, I exported it as a DST file as well. It looks the same, but again, if I resize this up, let me just do 400%. Let me do that. We'll just do 200 so it's not super exaggerated. So I just resized it. We just took a 1-inch text, made it 2 inches tall. Nothing too big. But because it's a DST, it destroyed it. So that's, again, versus if I go back to the native, even as a true type, if I resize this, I think I did 200. Yeah. It looks weird because it's not meant to be however wide. Yeah, 9. I can, go down to, where is it? Fill, auto split. Boom, fixed it. Now it's ready for 3D puff. I'll take my trophy now. And
we'll just put Justin's stamp of approval on that.
Yeah, it's on the website and everything, the top secret one. But yeah, that's how that works in Wilcom. So back to Jeff.
Yep. Oh wait, I stopped sharing my screen.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
There we go. So I've done the same thing in Floriani, and it's really fun to be able to do this in multiple softwares to see how they handle different aspects of text differently. So this font up here is a object-based font that was digitized to be a keyboard font in the software, which I had a lot of fun fonts in there. It took me a little bit. But this will scale really, really well. And each object was based off of something that somebody digitized. Words. Okay, so this font down here, this was a true type font that was brought in. And as you can see, for the most part, it did a pretty good job on the B. There's a little odd split line right there. It did okay on the R. I'm going to make everybody really dizzy here. You can see how it stopped this object here and stopped this object here, and it threw these stitches a little bit wider. If this is smaller, you're probably not going to notice like something like that. But when you start getting larger, the way things look when they're overlapped and underlapped is going to draw your eye to it. And one of the harder things about digitizing with text is everybody knows what it's supposed to look like. If you take something and you digitize it, a smiley face, right? we can all digitize it a little bit different. We all know it's going to be a smiley face, but it can be a little bit different. As long as it's round, everybody's going to kind of understand, this is what it is. But when you start getting into text and things start happening that you're not quite sure of, like this right here, I have this split line that goes right here. That's something that people are going to notice when they look at your file. When you have weird split lines cutting across your letters, they're going to notice it. And so it becomes even more important when you're looking at digitizing text that you are cognizant of these things, especially when you're digitizing it. I know with a lot of true type fonts, and there's varying degrees of what people will say about this, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up, but you can use true type fonts to an extent. Some of the letters, especially when you start getting into a basic sort of blocky font, the majority of the letters are going to auto digitize okay. You're going to have to go in, you're going to have to fix the ones that there are going to be issues with. But it's as long as you're cognizant that, hey, I'm going to have to go in and check all these letters, it's not really a bad thing. Now, the ones I typically see them have a lot of problems with are like Q's and Z's, and sometimes B's have issues, depending on the type of font. Now, if you don't really want to look at it like that and you don't really want to drill down on the letters like that, then it's always better to use an object-based font that's native to the software. Let me get this right. In Brilliance, it's BX fonts. Floriani, it's asset files. Wilcom, it's ESA fonts. Pulse is, that's going to be a tough one. I forgot what their extension was.
It's not PXF for that.
I think it might be POF.
Yeah.
For Pulse object fonts. So as long as you can get an object type font, it's going to sew out better. It's going to run better. And I'm going to just grab a couple of comments here. So Ramona says, so the software has a hard time making the conversion. It sees work based on the rules it was built to use. And that's going to be, a lot of it's going to be like auto digitizing because it is taking a vector shape and it's trying to auto convert it. Jesse says the true type font would probably have more stitches in it. That's possible. Not going to say it would or it wouldn't, because that is really going to be dependent on the font that you're going to use. I would look at it with a grain of salt if you're using a true type font. You can go to any font site, right? You can download as many fonts as you want, but they're not going to stitch out the same as an object font that's based in the software. You're going to have to do some work to them, where an object-based font, you're just going to be able to type them out and go. Oh, whoops. I had my caps lock on. That's never good. But I think Matt's got something queued up he wants to show.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is when you got let's say you have a true type font that your customer's like, this is the font that I use, and you need to use it a lot, and it just looks funky, it might just be worth your while sending the font to a digitizer and saying, hey, can you digitize this true type font into an actual object font so I can use it with my keyboard and typing things? So like this design I have up on my screen, this is a screenshot, so I could blur out the last name, which you can almost practically read anyways. This is IBM Plex Sans Medium. That is what they required for their branding. It is exactly what I'm using. I'm not using a native, embroidery font. This is a true type font. It looks okay. I probably should have gotten it, digitized as an actual keyboard font, but I do these I think I've done 14 of these patches, and it just didn't really pay for me to do it at the time. If I had a contract and I was doing these, regularly, then yeah, I would definitely do it. And I've had Jeff help me with a specialized font for all my military patches with all the tops and bottoms that he did with me, and it helps save a lot of time, and it just makes everything look a lot better. So that's one of the things you can do, is you just reach out to your digitizer and say, hey, this font, can I please get it done as a keyboard? And then you can use that keyboard font now on any platform like your Etsy or any e-commerce or whatever. Because you don't want to have to go through and fix all these letters. Because like if I fix all the letters for this person's patch or shirt or whatever, and then I go to the next person, they might have the letter. Let's see, at the end looks really weird. Everyone that has an N that I type, I'm gonna have to go and fix that N every single time, or I could copy and paste it, which would be even more worse. But
I will add to that, though, if you are asking your digitizer to make you a keyboard lettering font, chances are it's going to cost a little bit more than the left chest.
Oh yeah.
It's digitizing upper, lower, special characters, and then it's saving them out into a keyboard design file. And depending on the software, kerning can go into that, and it's going to take a lot more of their time to digitize something that is going to be keyboard editable for you. So take that with kind of a grain of salt too, is that if you are going to ask somebody to make you a custom font just for you, it may cost you a little bit more than, it's probably going to cost you closer to like a jacket back design, honestly. I know some digitizers, they'll offset the cost if they're able to sell the font later.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that.
But that all comes down to the licensing of the font that you're trying to use, and whether or not that's something that can be done. You want to throw anything else on there, Matt?
Yeah, I guess just really quickly, licensing is important too. Make sure you're aware of what websites you're using. Some of them will let you download a font and use it, but it's not exactly a legit shared file, so you're liable for the use of that. I know Google Fonts, I believe all of those are royalty free.
They're open source,
so you can do whatever you want with them,
depending.
Yeah.
You got to look at the licensing, right?
Yeah.
It all comes down to the fine print. It's your responsibility to make sure that you are covered. The fonts that you're using, that you have the licensing to do that. And I know some fonts out there, you can go into the licensing and it will explicitly say not for embroidery.
Yeah. And if you are using a TrueType font for a company that houses the House of Mouse, and it's called Pixie Font or something.
I've never heard of that company.
It is not. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, sometimes it's just better to err on the side of safety than massive lawsuits and
it's not worth it.
Shutdowns for your business. So, anyways, I got caught reading a comment. Ramona says, here we go. Open source can be used personal or commercial, and royalty free means you just do not pay a fee for each use. Copyright means you need to purchase the license to use. And then some fonts I think might be trademarked. It's a murky water when you start going down into it. But it's always better to know what you're doing and be sure that you're able to do it without getting in trouble. And that's most definitely we should get a lawyer on here one day. I think having a copyright lawyer on
that would be nice, which actually segues into what I was going to say is if you're not on our Discord, you should join it. It's really awesome. We created a new channel under the general discussion where you can suggest a live topic. So if you like the format of this one and you're like, man, I really wish that the nerds would talk about, I don't know, I don't have anything off the top of my head. Of sending it to the actual machine now. I don't know, something weird.
Duct taping your stabilizer to your hoop. All the fun things, like I'll duct tape stuff.
Yeah, or we can have Jeff run a couple designs where he's doing sweatshirts and he embroiders the sleeve of the sweatshirt to the back of the hoop. I think that would be a fun one to do.
I think that would be fun, but I'm not sure the educational value other than throwing popcorn at me.
Yeah, that's intentional blooper reels. But yeah, but seriously, join the Discord. Links are in the description. Head on over to the suggested live topic and then post what you'd like us to do. It's free for you. Keeps us entertained. Hopefully, you get a few laughs. And then also,
if you do have a design that you're having issues with, you can always send that in too for our Digitizing 911 segment, where we'll take a look at it. And if it is a good candidate for showing people on a live what the problem is and how to repair it, we will do a segment on it as well.
And then you get the file back. It's kind of like free digitizing.
No, it's not. Where's Justin when you need him? Anyways, guys, that's pretty much all we had that we were going to show you guys today. Make sure if you are going to Long Beach that you jump over and you see Justin's class. As I believe he's teaching with Eric and I forgot the guy's name. But Justin will be there. I just shipped off a bunch of Embroidery Nerd swag to him. So hopefully if that gets to him by tomorrow, he'll have a bunch of stuff to give away too. So if you find him there at the show, you may be able to grab that stuff and walk away with some lanyards and stuff. So Ramona. Matt, I have an average of 3 to 6 digitizing 911 files. Should I send them every day?
Yeah, that's fine. That's definitely not what I was doing for about never.
All right, guys. Well, I am Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. That is Matthew Enderly from Patch Rays, and we're both here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.